why do they want me to have this? Why do they want me to want this? You know, a big thing to help your kids understand is the difference between wants and needs. But ask yourself, why do I want this? Am I trying to fill a hole that should be filled with love?
Smart money parenting.
All right, everybody, welcome back to a special episode of Smart Money Parenting. Chad and I are here hanging out together in Utah. It's a beautiful sunny day.
Beautiful day outside. A lot of mountains. There's even some snow up there. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is my first time in Utah not skiing, actually.
That's true.
I think, ever.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful here in the summertime. We are hanging out here, and we're going to record some episodes, and we've been talking about this for the last little bit. Advertising. Do you know the impact of advertising on your kids?
And
this
and
is
how do you
crazy.
protect your kids from being like totally influenced by just the ads that are everywhere? Because it's everywhere.
The average person sees hundreds of thousands of advertisements in a day.
It's crazy.
All used to influence, persuade, get you to think a certain way, to buy a certain thing, to have a certain identity. It's everywhere. 20 minutes on social media, you're seeing over 1,000 advertisements.
Sure.
It's insane. So how do we protect our kids? I think the first thing we should do is kind of discuss what the goal is of advertising, like what happens. Oh, you know what I just thought about? When I was in high school, I did this project that I've never forgot. It was probably the most interesting paper I ever wrote. It was about subliminal messaging.
Oh, that's a cool topic.
And subliminal messaging is everywhere because you have your conscious, what you can kind of see and react to, but you have your subconscious.
You don't even notice it.
You don't notice.
It's like in movies where you didn't notice like there was some flash of a McDonald's hamburger or something like that. And it was like so fast. You didn't know.
A product placement.
Yeah.
Somebody's drinking a Coca-Cola, some cool place. They're
Yeah.
driving the Lambo, whatever it would be, is all messaging and all marketing. And what they were talking about, like in these advertisements in a magazine, there is something in the ice of a drink that is like a beautiful girl outline.
Stop.
In the ice.
What?
So your subconscious is actually seeing like a provocative image.
That's crazy.
Or like, you know, they've shown this over Disney videos forever. You know, you see crazy Disney subliminal messages and crazy things in Little Mermaid and crazy things in backgrounds and in the sky. And subliminal messages, we have to be protective.
Right.
Because it is everywhere. And every business is trying to sell something, whether it's a good business or a bad business.
What's interesting is how much the commercials cost for Super Bowl ads. For 30 seconds, there's a reason it costs millions of dollars for 30 seconds.
It's like 7 million now or something like that.
For 30 seconds. So that they know that like our attention, if we just capture a little bit of messaging and advertising, there's going to be decisions made because of that advertising. Yep. One thought I wrote down about this is the questions you can ask your kids. I think this is a good question to ask your kids. When you see a commercial or an advertisement, you ask, what is this ad trying to sell? Or why do they want me to want this?
Ooh.
I kind of like that question.
Why do they want me to want this?
Why do they want me to want this? Like, what do you think that would do if you asked your kid over and over to, get them thinking like that?
Yeah, and branding has become a huge focal point of so many businesses, especially with social media, online, going into Web 2, now Web 3. Everything is about look and feel and appeal and identity.
It's true.
There are these things out there called schemas, and I think it's important to educate our listeners on this. A schema is a childhood wound that the best marketers in the world go after. Because if they can hit your pain point, your schema, your deepest childhood wounds, then they know they've hooked you.
Give me an example.
Control. Someone who grew up with without control,
without
chaos. They grew up in chaos.
Okay.
So when somebody markets you with a message about control, you're immediately like, yeah, I want to control my life. I want to be in control. Distrust. Somebody who doesn't trust the system because they've been burned by it or whatever. You sell distrust of a system. Competition. I just want to compete and be the best. If you can sell to that, somebody who was raised in a competitive home, who's super competitive, immediately jumps in. Fear fear of the future.
Fear is definitely one.
Fear is a big schema. Another schema is basically like getting an edge. So most people, and this is one for me, it's like, I'm not just going to compete. I want to have like an edge. I want to be ahead. I want to be like better than average. I want to be ahead of the rest. I want to get a step up in any way I can.
A head start.
A head start, a hack. So selling to that, it's like, here's the secret to unlock the next step. It's like this messaging happens all the time, and keeping up with the Joneses is another huge schema. It's like, do you want to be like this? Do you want to look like this? Do you want to get all the girls and have all the money and have all the cars and homes and jets and everything? It's like they're selling some sort of childhood wound to you. And so it's really important for us to understand that I was trained in this. And the person who trained me is one of the top copywriters in the world, Paris Lampropoulos, Greek guy.
It's a great last name.
And he came and trained all of us at Genius. And he basically said, I'm about to give you guys a weapon. And I need you to use it for good. I need you all to raise your right hand, commit to that you would use this for good, not for evil.
Interesting.
You're not selling gambling. You're not selling drugs. You're not selling alcohol. You're not selling things. You are using this for something that helps someone's life, reduces their pain, and increases their connection and love. That's my only request. And if it's not you, get out of the room right now. Because it's a weapon. Advertising and messaging and persuasion. Robert Cialdini. Persuasion and persuasion. Like, this is marketing, guys. So your kids are looking at it all day, every day. Every time they're on their screen, they're getting hundreds, thousands of messages. Every time they're walking through a mall or a store or in the school, there's messaging everywhere on everybody's clothing. And I think it's really important to talk to our kids about what messages are you going to believe and what messages are you going to reject. Always try to look behind the curtain and try to figure out what someone's getting at so that you can understand, is this beneficial to my life? Or is this going to take me down? Is this going to hurt me?
I think the first step is recognizing that they're being advertised to. Like, kids often are just watching and they think, well, this is just the show I'm watching or the movie or whatever it is. And they see the previews or they see commercials or pop-up ad on social media. And they don't even necessarily realize that there's incentives and motivations behind the ad.
Yep.
It's just kind of like, oh, this is interesting. What? They don't really think like that question. I really like that question though. Why do they want me to want this?
Yeah.
That's a good question. But like emphasizing the different forms of advertising, social media, even gaming. I'm sure, I mean, I'm not a gamer, but I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's in the gaming industry, in the gaming world, that's targeted to influence future buying decisions or how kids think about things. So
and agendas are big.
Totally agendas, yes.
Why do they want me to watch this? Why do they want me to have this? Why do they want me to want this? You know, a big thing to help your kids understand is the difference between wants and needs, right? That's a huge thing for our kids. You might need this to get by. You might want this because it's a nice thing to have. But ask yourself, why do I want this? Am I trying to fill a hole that should be filled with love or God or family or
real relationships? Yeah, real people.
Real people.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. People, some of the worst sales tricks are getting you to think that their product is going to solve a hole in you.
Or it'll replace a problem, or it'll replace a person, a relationship.
That's
sometimes,
right.
Where it's like, hey, you need us and this. Maybe you don't need your parents, or you don't need your mom or dad, or you don't need your good friends. This is what you need. It's this right here, the magic, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
And a good way to live your life is to have a job that is actually selling, because we don't think selling is a cuss word. In fact, marketing itself is it's persuasion, it's influence. If you're using that for good, something that benefits somebody's life, that reduces their pain and suffering, that connects them more, those are good things.
For sure.
Like if it's healthy food, I definitely want there to be health foods that have great marketing versus Pepsi and Coca-Cola.
You want to persuade people to make good choices.
That's right. Yeah. So use it for good. It's a tool. It's a weapon. But you need to understand that you're getting hit hundreds of thousands of times a day.
How do you protect kids from being overly influenced by advertising? Like, what are some things practically you think? Like, what about ad blockers or things like that maybe that we could teach, make sure the parents are talking about to their kids?
Yeah.
Any ideas you have that come to mind?
The first and most important thing I would say is reinforce identity. Reinforce values.
Why does that make a difference in?
When a kid is sure of who they are, and they're sure of where they come from, and they're sure of the fact that they're loved, that they have purpose, that they were made for a reason,
Right.
that reinforces so much self-confidence that you will not fall prey to a lot of these schemas, right? These deep wounds that people are advertising to kids all the time.
Interesting.
And a lot of times, even some of the most addicting things in the world use marketing to hook people.
Sure.
Whether it's negative
it
content, whether it's nasty content, whether it's addiction, whether it's drugs and alcohol, whether it's, something that pulls you in is pulling you in for a specific reason. And here's a really good tip for advertising. If you don't know what the product is, you are the product. If you don't know what this social media app or this company or this service is providing, what are the people paying for? Who's the customer? What's the product? You're the customer. They're taking your attention. That's the biggest thing people are selling right now.
It's true.
You look at some of the top social media influencers and they say, my job is to day trade attention. They market attention. They want your attention as much as possible because that means more ad dollars, more looks, more views, more likes, more comments, more money for them, or more money for the sponsors and the advertisers that are trying to keep you hooked. So understand what's behind the curtain, right? This is a big Wizard of Oz moment. I want you guys to know that it's not some scary green face. There's somebody pulling the strings behind the scenes to capture your attention and sell you something based on childhood wounds. And so I think look for what they're selling, understand that you're being sold, and then ask yourself this kind of blocker question. Does this help my life? Is this beneficial for me? Does this help me get to where I want to go? So identity, reinforcing identity,
right.
Reinforcing values, that a kid is loved, that they're valuable, that they have gifts to give the world. And then where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? Help your kids really connect with a future version of themselves. That will help push away so much of the negative advertising.
That'll help them discern what I should pay attention to and what I should ignore, because they'll have more direction and more, self-worth. This is interesting. I just looked up the stat. How much money is spent on advertising in the U.S.? $250 billion. This was in 2020, which, by the way,
in the U.S. alone.
In the U.S. alone, the world was shut down for most of that, and $250 billion spent on advertising. So, this
for 330 million people.
This says this year it's supposed to be 271 billion, which is an 11% increase from 2022. So
that's thousands and thousands of dollars per person in America.
That is
wild.
$271 billion this year alone in just the U.S.
Yep.
So advertising it's everywhere. You can't escape it. I think it's important to teach kids. Like when my kids would watch a TV show, we would always just pause before the commercials. And I said, we don't watch commercials. Like, we don't need to be sold anything today. So they kind of got that little idea of like, oh, we don't watch commercials. Yeah. So ever since they were little, they're like, we don't watch commercials. So they skip through them because it's like, we don't need to be sold anything.
Well, and it's probably important to tell your kids what it is. Yeah. So advertising is a way to convert customers. It's a way to give people an opportunity to see your product or service and move into action to buy it. And so there's these things called impressions, and there's things called clicks, and there's things called views, right? So most marketing agencies or most brands, they look at what's our cost per click, what's our cost per impression, which someone looks at it, what's our cost per view, and then what's our cost per acquisition. So what they do is they add up all their advertising, and most companies in the world, they can get these impressions and clicks and views for pennies, 2 cents, 1 cent, 10 cents, $1. And so $271 billion, that's trillions of impressions and clicks.
Jeez.
So think about that. You are looking at an unlimited amount of these things at all times, and every company is doing the math on you. They're trying to see how many times does this person need to see my thing, view my thing, click my thing, or walk past my thing, or see somebody wearing my thing,
right,
or drinking my thing, or riding in my thing, for you to want to buy it, to move over the action line, to purchase it. So all of this can be used in good or bad ways. But for you as a family, it's important to teach your kids what advertising is,
Right.
and how people use it to persuade you or persuade you to actually buy something. Most companies, and we're trained in this, we know it takes 7, 10, 15 impressions or looks or times seeing a brand before somebody goes, you know what, maybe this is cool for me.
Right.
Maybe this is something I want. And then you just have to ask the question, is what they want me to have what I should have?
Yeah. Well, this is a good part right here. It says, discuss with your kids the impact of advertising through social media, games, and apps. Highlight the concept of hidden advertising. You talked about that. Subliminal messages, product placements, sponsored content,
Agendas.
agendas, influencer partnerships. But I like this part. Discuss the link between advertising, consumerism, and materialism. So talk about how early exposure, I think this is important. Talk to our kids about how advertising sometimes makes you think that you have to buy all these things to be a good person,
to be happy,
to be happy, to fit in,
to be fulfilled.
Yeah, all that stuff, to be fulfilled. Like you don't,
to be accepted.
These advertisers are not trying to meet your goals.
Yep.
They're trying to meet their goals.
That's right.
And so as much as you can, talk to your kids. If you're listening to the Smart Money Parenting Show, we know that you're actually looking for good ideas on how to have better conversations with your kids. And this is one of those topics where let's talk about advertising. Let's talk about what it means, where it is, and how to protect yourself from being overly influenced. People could see an advertisement for Air Jordan shoes that are $200. And suddenly this kid who was feeling great about himself, and then suddenly he's like, well, I don't have those new shoes, and so I don't feel great about myself anymore.
Yep.
It's all because of an advertisement that popped up.
Right.
So,
and there is different types of advertising that is both white hat and black hat. Black hat advertising is like, you're not good enough without this. Scarcity, right? You're never going to amount to anything unless you do this or buy this, right? White hat advertising is like, look at all these amazing people doing it. Let's compete and you get a special award, buy now, and you can get an extra special thing for free. But there's these tips of good and bad. And one really good litmus test is, how does this make me feel? Am I being pushed into consumerism, materialism? Am I pushed into an identity, someone else's identity for me?
Right.
And that's the stuff that you can repel. But the stuff you might want to listen to are things that make your life better. I think that's it.
Yeah, it's a great conversation today. I feel like there were some good nuggets there.
We like to end things fast so you can get your life back. We'll see you guys next time. If you want to ask us any questions, go to smartmoneyparenting.com. Again, thanks to our sponsor, Gravy Stack. Just launched the banking and investing app for kids and teens that play like a game. We are all in on this. Our kids use it. We love it. So go to gravystack.com/smart if you want to get signed up. And we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
It takes more than money if you want to succeed. You gotta know what to do with it. You gotta take the lead. You gotta give them confidence. You gotta make them smart. If your kids are gonna thrive, now's the time to start. Smart money parenting.